I've read too many books and too many references referring to this incident as though it is a blood covenant. It is not a blood covenant. It looks nothing like a blood covenant. If it was a blood covenant, I would have spoken about it last week. But it's not. This is a boundary border covenant. Blood is involved. Yes, a lot of blood is involved. Doesn't make it a blood covenant. It's a boundary covenant. It is a covenant of God saying, this is from here to there, as far as you can see. That's all yours, man. Let's go get it. And I am going to protect and preserve those lands for you, because I myself have passed through back and forth to show you that I'm standing at this gate. I'm standing at this doorway, and I'm not going to let anything or anybody come in. That's God's covenant. That's the border and boundary covenant. Now, let's move on let's go back to the house again. Let's leave the border, let's leave the altar, and go back to the house again. Now, you got the cave and the tent and those structures. And let's talk about how people would handle this threshold covenant idea between themselves. Because we talked about, man and God. Now let's talk about humans together. Okay? And what they would do, it's very interesting, what they would do is they would say, okay, I belong to a tribe. All my tribe folk died. Okay, there was a famine or wild animals or an army or something. I'm the only survivor. It doesn't matter how, I'm the only survivor. I need to join another tribe. I need to join another clan. How do I do it? Simple. You just walk up to another clan and tribe, stand in front of the doorway of the biggest tent there is, and just stand there. Just be like, can I join? And if you're accepted, they'll come out, they'll sacrifice an animal right on the threshold, the blood will pour out, and you will simply step over the sacrifice, walk in, and the minute you do, you're accepted as family. Being accepted as family has certain rights. They are responsible for your protection. They are responsible for your provision. Now, of course, you got to do you got to do something, and you can't just sit around and do nothing. But they're responsible to feed you and give you water, and they're responsible to give you your rights as any other family member. That's how they did it. It's interesting, but where else and how else does a person leave their family and join another? Marriage. So what they would do back in the day, way back in the day, the groom would go to the house of the bride, stand in front of the threshold, and if he was accepted, the father of the bride would sacrifice an animal, the blood would pour, he would walk over the threshold, go inside, take his bride, go to his house or his parents' house. They would both stand together, an animal would be sacrificed, and they would go inside, declaring and signifying that this woman or this guy, wherever they decide to live with the parents of the groom or the bride, has responsibility for provision, protection, and rights. The marriage covenant is a derivative of the threshold covenant. And that's how people would get married back then. By the way, that practice, both in Egypt and in Armenia, were still happening until the late 1800s. You guys have seen movies or have seen people do this where the groom carries the bride inside the house. You know where that comes from? It comes from the blood covenant. The threshold covenant. Because the idea of carrying is that, she's got a white dress on, it's a pretty dress. I don't want the blood to spoil the dress, so I'll carry her. That's where it comes from. We still carry the girls, but we're like, why am I doing this? Kind of thing, I just do, But that's where it comes from. That's where it originates from. Now, so we talked about people joining tribes and marriage. Now let's talk about visitors. As the Silk Route was developed and trade was going on, and people were just moving from place to place and all that stuff, there'd be a lot of visitors in different places. And so how would you welcome a guest in? Well, you'd sacrifice an animal on the threshold, and you would let the guest walk in the house. And when that guest walks in the house, and by the way, the animal sacrifice would determine the level of honor you're giving to the guest. You don't think he's that big of a deal, you sacrifice a pigeon. If you think he's okay, you sacrifice, it's tasty. If you think he's okay, you'd sacrifice maybe like a goat or something. If you think like he's a pretty nice guy, you sacrifice a lamb. If you think that if he's royalty, if he's the man, I mean, if he's a king or the son of a king or something, you sacrifice the fattened calf. That's the animal of choice right there. That's a good meal. You know, of course, you'd eat the animal that you sacrifice afterwards, of course. Now, my notes say this is where I begin to brag about my culture. Okay, so this idea of honoring the visitor, it still stands today in places like Egypt and, you know, the Middle East. Okay, because of the fact that when you let someone in your house, you're basically saying you're family. I mean, people use that in the U.S., you know, your family. But they use that after like 7 years of knowing the person. You know, in Egypt, once you walk in the house, you're family. It's done. You are family. And this is the extent of it, guys. When you the reason why I must bring something with me when I enter into someone's house for the first time, that something that stays behind when I leave, is because of this incredible honor of, hey, you're welcoming me in as part of the family. I have to bring something with me. I cannot not bring anything with me. Okay? That's only once. And then after that, then it's family. You don't have to bring anything else. Darn it. Okay. Now, here's what happens when you walk in the house of someone. When you walk in the house of someone, what's the first thing they want to do? It even happens in the States. What's the first thing your instinct says? Would you like anything to drink? Would you like anything to eat? Where does that come from? It's ingrained in us from this threshold covenant thing, is that once someone's in your house, then you have to feed them. You have to give them water. You have to give them food. You have to, you know, help them wash their feet, help them rest, help them somehow. Their family, for crying out loud. And to this day, guys, when I'm in certain houses in Egypt, I have to be very careful with what I say, because if I'm walking around in someone's house and I look at like a painting and I say, wow, that's beautiful. Oh, that's just, the color is just so awesome. And is that Thomas Kincaid or something? You know. And when I start admiring the painting, the host is compelled to get up there, yank the painting off the wall, wrap it in paper, and hand it to me. And it could be in the family for generations, but they're still compelled to yank it off the wall and give it to me. And if I refuse, it's a great dishonor. And I'd say, no, I can't take that. I mean, what am I going to do with that? I can't take that. I'm just saying it's pretty, that's all. And they say, no, you have to take this. Because if you don't take this, you're preventing my God from blessing me with something better. So please, take it. Well, of course, you kind of take it. Okay, so you have to be very, very careful. If you ever visit Egypt, be very careful what you say. Very careful. Don't start admiring people's stuff. You'll leave with a lot of things. Customs will be a problem. Okay, now. Yes, okay. Another story. The significance of the front door is huge when it comes to the Middle East. Okay, I remember when I was a kid, I was in my grandmother's house. My grandmother lived in a house, in an apartment building. It was from the mid 1800s. So no elevator. She lived on the 6th floor. You get up the steps. Very ornate, very pretty, very Greco-Roman, French kind of design. It's awesome. Okay. So she called in a repairman. I think it was a plumber or an electrician or somebody. She called in a repairman. This repairman does the 6 flights up the steps to the front door, knocks on the door. She looks through the whole thing, and she's like, "Who are you?" And the guy says, "I'm the electrician you call." And she says, "Well, you're going to have to go back downstairs and come up the back door, the service door, because this is the front door, and I'm not letting you in through the front door." And I thought, that's pretty mean, Grandma. I mean, he's probably going to dirty the carpet a little bit, but who cares? Just, clean it up later. But no. You cannot let someone in through the front door. Because when you let them in through the front door, you're giving them the rights to the house. You're telling them you have a place of honor and a place of standing within this house. But if you let them in through the back door, they're just here to work. They got no rights. I don't have to feed them. I don't have to give them water. I don't have to do anything. They're just here to work. Interesting. I may describe the significance of that biblically later on. I don't know if I will or not. Now, okay. I'm having way too much fun to worry about time, so I'm just going to say this. It's about time. It's about time to honor you guys for this. So, some Americans have a really great understanding of threshold covenant. Because I was in the house of an American couple, several years ago. And I looked at, we were playing cards. And I looked at the hostess. And in the most innocent way possible, I called her a tramp. Now, where I grew up, in Egypt, they taught us that tramp means vagabond. The stick and the sack and, homeless person, right? They didn't tell me the other half of the meaning. And so we're playing cards, and she was competitive and all that stuff, and some reference was made about being a lady or not being a lady, and so then I said, well, call me a tramp kind of thing. And everybody was shocked, except for the host. The host showed such grace and such wasn't a problem kind of thing. And thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for that threshold covenant. That was awesome. The next day at work, I said, because I asked, what's the problem? What are you people so offended about it all of a sudden? It's just vagabond, So next day, I asked the person I was working at the store, and I asked them, I called someone tramp. What is the problem with the Americans and tramp? And you don't know what that means, do you? And so when they said the real meaning of the word tramp, I was so embarrassed. I called her up and I said, please, sorry, Stacy, I'm so sorry. So now you have it on tape. You have the apology on tape. It's official now. Mike, it's been years, but it's official. Glad I got that off my chest. Okay. All right. Now, when it comes to threshold covenant, and we said when a visitor walks in, you have to give them food, you have to give them water, you have to give them protection, and you have to give them rights. But what happens when someone greater than you walks in your house? What happens when a king walks in your house? You're going to protect the king? You're going to give food to the king? No. The king is now the one who gives you protection. The king is now the one who gives you provision. The king is the one who pays for the feast. And the king is the one who gives you his rights. So when a king would invade a village, okay, what the king would do is he would walk through this village, with his army, and he would look for friendlies. He would find out who's on my side and who's not. And the way they would find out who's on his side is people who would honor him by sacrificing an animal at the doorway. So there'd be blood on all the houses that say, I want to be friends with you, king. I don't want you to kill me. They would kill an animal, and they'd let the blood pour in front of the doors, and then they would kind of wait inside and hope he doesn't, make sure he sees the blood. And then after centuries of doing that, they realized, that's a puddle on the floor. He may not see that thing. So why don't we just take this blood from the floor and put it on the doorposts, put it on top of the lintel, put it on the door itself. Let's just put blood everywhere just to make sure he sees it. He sees it because we certainly don't want any mistakes. We don't want any misunderstandings. So now you got a very, very bloody door. The king looks at the bloody doors and he's like, oh, those people are nice people. Okay, so he picks the door, walks through it, and says, hi, I'm your new king. Here are my rules. Here are my regulations. Here are my laws. This is what I promised to do. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to be your king, and the feast is on me tonight. Let's party.